The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated.
Welcome back to the Nova Society. I'm your host, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, and I'm here with my panel, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Mark Bound. Today we will be answering listener emails, and we have wonderful questions, and we have one from Timothy, who lives in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and Timothy asks, as we enter the third week of the government shutdown, both sides are blaming the other for the impasse. Many outlets, including yours, blame the Republicans or place blame on the Republicans since they hold both houses of Congress and the presidency. Yet the math says that Republicans do need some Democratic votes to reach a deal. Does your panel see a pathway to breaking this political deadlock? If not, as this goes on, what real-world consequences could there be for the economy and the Americans in general? And yes, you are correct, Timothy. The mathematics does say, or the arithmetic, the Republicans do need some Democratic votes to reach a deal. However, I don't know if that will happen. The longer this goes on, of course, the more painful the whole shutdown is going to be. I had been thinking that with a simple majority, the Republicans could simply pass a continuing resolution without any Democrats. However, I recently learned that Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, has told the Senate majority, I guess it's John Thune, that the Senate must have, I guess, a filibuster of 60 votes, and that the Senate cannot have a simple majority of 52 or 53 or whatever the simple majority is. However, the Senate, as a separate but equal branch, they could go ahead and pass the continuing resolution or the CR with a simple majority, regardless of what Mike Johnson says, but then it's got to go back to the House, and I guess that would be rejected because it's not what Johnson says, and of course what Johnson says is what Trump says. So yeah, I think we're really in a bind, and Trump has already said that he will not only fire Democrats from and they are firing people from the federal government without these are not furloughs, these are permanent job losses, and we'll start canceling Democratic programs. They're not Republican programs. These are programs that Democrats like. Trump said that Republican programs are working well, but he didn't define what working well meant. So I don't see a way to breaking this political deadlock unless the Democrats fold, and I hope that they don't. I've been thinking about this. How long can this go on? So what do you think, Mark and Scott? How long? I mean, this could theoretically go on, and Johnson keeps saying, oh, on vacation, we're on vacation, we're on vacation. I mean, do they have to come back from vacation? Can't they just stay out forever?
No, we could have no government at all, for sure. Look, I mean, Johnson's calculus is a little bit different from any other that we've seen before because he's refusing to bring the House back so he can avoid swearing in the new senator from Arizona who has said that she would be the final vote needed to release the Epstein file. And of course, it's by now very well known that Trump is all over the Epstein file. It was never anything that Democrats really cared about before, but now the Republicans have made such a mess of this that it is something that's getting to be kind of interesting. And from the Republican side, they could end this at any time. All they have to do is stop lying about illegal aliens getting health care, and which Trump repeated yesterday, and I haven't heard anybody say that for a week now, and restore the federal funding for the Medicaid expansion and Obamacare in mostly red states that would restore healthcare benefits to tens of millions of Americans. And they're not doing that. And so we've got a bit more of a complicated mess than usual. The last and longest government shutdown was 35 days. I have a feeling that we're going to go way over that this time. What do you think, Mark?
Oh, yeah. I mean, right now we're at 15 days, and there does not seem to be, any kind of movement on either side. Timothy, you're right. The math does mean that I believe they need 7 votes, 7 or 8. Right now, I think it's 7.
The House doesn't need to come back for this because they've already passed a continuing resolution. They would have to change it if they wanted to restore funding, as I said before, for healthcare benefits for these millions of Americans that are losing it, who are mostly their constituents. And again, we're seeing even like a Marjorie Taylor Greene reacting poorly, I think, or angrily, that her constituents are going to lose their healthcare benefits. It's going to cost a lot of money to a lot of people to continue having healthcare benefits, or not having healthcare benefits, paying a fine under the Obamacare rule that says if you don't have healthcare benefits, you have to pay a fine. And, you would just go to the emergency room, I guess, if there was anything wrong with you.
Yeah. So first of all, one thing you probably never expected to hear on this podcast is Marjorie Taylor Greene is starting to sound like the sane one in the room. Right. Nobody would have expected to hear that out of us. And you're right. Yeah, we were talking about the Senate, and they do need 7. I don't see an impasse happening. I think that, as Brooke feels, I believe that it is extremely important that the Democrats hold their ground onto this. I mean, 7 votes is a lot to need when you only have, the majority they have in the Senate as far as Republicans. So there's a lot of minds they have to change. And that's a hard deal. But this could all be solved if they'd be willing to do some negotiation, a little bit of collaboration, a little bit of compromise, the way democracy is supposed to work. Compromise. Democracy does not work without it. And I think that the Republicans are showing, and if you say, do we blame them? I blame them, yes, because they are unwilling to sit down and compromise. And anybody that knows anything about what makes democracy work in the United States and anywhere else is the idea that that's what you have to have. You're not always going to get everything you want, and you have to understand that, and you have to be willing to accept it. And Scott's right. This absolute bullshit argument that illegal aliens are getting health care given to them on the taxpayer's dime, that's been proven false time and time again. But you're still seeing the president of the United States, who's probably the most uninformed human being on the face of the earth, and the most punchable face in the United States, as Scott would refer to him as, Mike Johnson, continually saying these things. And the hope is, and here's my issue with this. The hope is, of all these people that are saying that, they're hoping their constituents are stupid. That's their only thing that they could possibly hope for. Because anyone that goes in and does the most minor Google search onto this will find that what's being said is untrue. So the reliance on the Republican Party at this point in time is that our constituents are so stupid, they're going to believe anything we say, and it's just a matter of firing them up on something that does not exist. And that's why our government is shut down. Now, they can complain about the subsidies for Obamacare. They can complain about all this. Yeah, okay, you're complaining about that. I get it. Your position is you don't want to do it. All right. But when you've got somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is, everybody knows is pretty much batshit crazy, basically standing up and talking against her own party, sometimes you just got to listen. Sometimes you got to listen to the village idiot in the room because they might say something that makes sense. Marjorie Taylor Greene is making some sense here. I never thought in my entire life I would ever say that, but I am. And yeah, they need to reach a deal. This will go on. I totally agree with Scott. This will go on longer than the 35 days. We're at 15 right now, and there seems to be no indication, none, that they intend to sit down together and make an agreement. and come to some sort of middle ground that maybe that, yeah, it's going to be tough for both sides to stomach, but reopen up the government. And as far as the firings are concerned, here's the thing that gets me is when Trump first took office, he started firing people right and left because, I don't know, they were woke or they, weren't loyal enough or whatever. And they had to hire them back because these were people that had expertises that nobody else had. And we're going to run into that. This hurts our country. When you fire people at the nuclear regulatory agency that deal with the nuclear weapons, and you find out that they were the only people that were able to do the job, and you have to beg them to come back. I don't know. I mean, that's poor leadership. It's poor management. But then again, what do you expect out of somebody who was able to bankrupt casinos? And we still to this day can't figure out how you do that. I mean, I've tried, Scott. I've tried to figure out how do you bankrupt a casino. I can't do it.
You use it for money laundering, and
that must be it.
You're taking a dime for every dollar you're spending.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But and far from reconciling this thing. I mean, Trump is increasing the amount of damage that he's trying to do to Democratic-led cities and congressional districts and states. And there's an article today in the New York Times about him canceling or freezing $27.2 billion worth of projects in Democratic congressional districts and cities and states, compared to not even $1 billion in Republican districts. It was 738.7 million in Republican-led districts or states or cities, and these are mostly infrastructure projects that had gotten Biden infrastructure money or federal aid from the Build Back Better or whatever that ended up. Was it? I forget if that was the original name or the second name of it. The Build Back Better was the first name. It became known and voted on as the Inflation Reduction Act. And that money is being used for things like upgrades to electrical grids, investments in clean energy, as well as I said before, infrastructure money from the Biden era in public transportation, in the Second Avenue subway in New York, hydrogen energy project out in California. And these projects are being frozen. People are losing their jobs. There are grants being terminated. There are, he's causing pain, he thinks, in Democratic areas that are really affecting people across the political spectrum. But he's got a very black and white way of looking at things. And I think he's making things worse for his own constituents, for his own Republicans in Congress, and for Americans in general. And I don't think he cares or understands, or I'm not going to get into Donald Trump's head, but there are things like that were destroyed by Hurricane Sandy that they were rebuilding. In Chicago, there was transit upgrades. Chicago is, yes, a Democratic city. It always has been. But, Republicans live there, and in the suburbs especially have to get to work, and they're having trouble doing that. So there's all the complications are there. There's more, there's more coming. He's being extremely partisan in a lot of what he's doing as far as the shutdown is concerned. And I think really he has no incentive to bring government back because he doesn't care about government. He doesn't like government. He wants to make all the decisions himself. He's already talking about how generous he's been with various things that he's been talking about, like he's putting tariffs on Spain because they're not going along with NATO and increasing the amount of their military budget to 5% or whatever he's asked for the last time. So he's putting more tariffs on them. That means that we're not going to be getting stuff from Spain anymore, or if we do, it's going to be really expensive. I happen to like Spanish wine. I'm kind of going to miss that, I think. he's also threatened Argentina, right? So Besant, his Secretary of Treasury, has decided to bail out Argentina by buying $20 billion worth of useless Argentinian pesos and replacing them with American dollars so that they can bolster their economy. It mostly helps a friend of Scott Bessent's who's invested greatly in Argentina and was losing his shirt. And now Bessent is trying to help him out by bailing out an entire country. But yesterday, Trump said, you know what, I'm not going to do this if they don't return Milei to power. And Milei is, as you might expect for a government that is falling apart, an economy that is falling apart, in some trouble there. And Trump says, I've been very generous with Argentina, but that's not necessarily going to hold if they don't bring my guy back over there. And he's said the same thing about New York City. If Mamdani becomes the mayor, he's going to withdraw his very generous contributions, federal contributions to New York City, which is, of course, a laugh line because New York City sends a lot more out than they ever get back. And he really just seems to want to make everything more partisan and more divided, and cutting democratic programs is another, as you mentioned, is another thing that he keeps talking about. And it's a little disturbing to see a president of the United States being, wanting to be president for so few Americans and trying to increase the pain for people who just disagree with him. Smacks of authoritarianism. This weekend, as we're sitting here, is another No Kings rally around the country. I'm going to one nearby here in Connecticut. There are hundreds of them, and so people are going to be stepping up and reiterating the fact that we don't want a dictator here. We don't want a king in the United States, and that Trump has to stop talking about things and doing things the way he's been doing it, and that would include bringing Congress back. And he's shown no inclination for that.
To our listener, I do not believe that this shutdown is going to end anytime soon. There is no incentive for it to end anytime soon. The Democrats would have to end what they are doing, and I hope that they do not. I genuinely hope that they do not. Each of us has studied formally and academically and practiced mediation and negotiation, and what Trump is doing and what Mike Johnson is doing, that's not negotiation, and it's certainly not how any sort of adult would manage any type of governing. I think it's appalling.
But it is part and parcel of his program to get people to bend to his will by not being generous with them, in his words, unless they do what he wants them to do. And look, the more he does stuff like withhold money, claw back money, however you want to put it, the less incentive that Democrats have to work with him, because if there's what they call a clean CR, but he claws the money back, that's, the Democrats have undercut themselves and their priorities are not being taken care of. They've failed their voters. They've failed their constituents. So I think this is going to go on for a while. I think it's disgraceful. Frankly, it's disgusting. Trump himself once said when Barack Obama had a shutdown that it's all on the president. And I agree. It's on the president. I mean, the president is sometimes the mediator between houses of Congress, is sometimes the mediator between the parties that are represented in Congress. This is a fairly simple one. I think this should have been solved, but I don't think there's any incentive to solve it. They're trying to reduce the size of the federal government. They're going to replace those people with Trump loyalists, and then they'll come back and fund the government. But they haven't gotten there yet, and it's going to have to wait until they finish furloughing and then firing federal workers and then rehiring, them, not the people who left, but new people who are loyal to Trump, who have sworn loyalty, believe it or not, to Trump. And how sickening is this for the United States of America? It's beyond my imagination, really.
Yeah, it's beyond a lot of our imaginations. And to finish up with the question, Timothy, we have to remember something that we've always said here on this podcast, that the United States, one of its biggest assets we're a consumer nation. If you have the government shut down, guess who's one of the largest consumers as far as paying for stuff in the nation? The U.S. government. The government spends a lot of money. So that's a lot of money that is not going into the economy, which means that the GDP is going to drop. In 2019, when they had the first shutdown under Trump, we lost $11 billion. $11 billion. Now that's, compared to our national debt, that's not a lot, but every day this goes on. And when we think about this, first of all, yeah, he's firing workers. Even if he left the agencies at full strength and didn't do this process of firing workers, these agencies, after time being off and not working, are going to have to catch up. And that's going to delay services. They can only catch up so quickly. And if he's getting rid of employees, especially necessary ones, because he's rather arbitrary in who he gets rid of, the fact is that, yeah, you got services you want, it's going to take an awful lot longer because the agency has been gutted and it has been shut down for a period of time. There's a backlog, and you're just going to be you're just going to be a cog in the wheel trying to get your services. And whenever we have reduced GDP growth, such as this, and again, keep in mind the importance of the purse of the federal government, how much stuff they buy from American companies, from the world economies overall. They spend a lot of money. This increases the risk of a recession. So that's where you sit. Oh, and by the way, the government won't suffer from the recession. The American people will suffer from the recession. So hopefully we answered that.
Got anything more to add?
No, I think we've run that one down.
So thank you, Timothy. Thank you. Yeah, there will be consequences. Excuse me, and there will be consequences also for us nationally and probably for the world, given that the last time there was a huge crash in the American economy in 1929, there was also a global recession. So I hope that we answered your question.
I have a feeling we're gonna be talking about this for a while. Yeah,
I do too.
Yes, and there is a book called 1929 by Andrew Ross Sorkin. It is about the stock market crash. It is called 1929, and you might want to listen to him. Andrew Ross Sorkin has been on the he's on some YouTube programs, so you might want to just YouTube, check him out on Google, and you can find him speaking about his book, and you can learn more about 1929 and what happened and how it's linked to today. So thank you very much for your question, Timothy, and thank you for listening, and thank you to all our listeners. We do appreciate your time. And if you're not yet subscribed on the platform of your choice, please do so. Subscribing is free, and we look forward to seeing you again next time on the Nova Society.
The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing partners, Apple iTunes, the largest source of podcasts and music on the internet, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your source for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. We'd also like to thank all of our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a question or comment, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So for Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Scott Gershwer, and all of our production partners here at the Nova Society. I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power in society is knowledge. Thanks for listening, and we will see you again next time. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, BH Conflict Resolution Services, a full-service dispute resolution firm offering expert, cost-effective mediation services to couples, groups, and businesses. BHCRS can be reached at www.bhcrs.com.